So continuing on Staphylococcus, this will be a shorter video. In the last one we talked about the two main kinds of Staphylococcus that we're going to need to learn. Staphylococcus aureus, which is this golden spherical bacteria. It tends to no, I won't go into that now because we'll go into it in this video. And Staphylococcus epidermidis, which we find all covering our skin. And usually it's no problem, but if we get a break in the skin, which allows them to get through that barrier and enter our blood or lymphatic system, that's when we're going to get problems. So Staphylococcus aureus gets its name from its golden colour, which is a result of a pigment that it produces. Staphylococcus produces a few enzymes that are important for its function. So it's able to produce coagulase, which coats bacterial surfaces with fibrin upon contact with the blood. So we can see that in this image here. It's causing the blood to clot. These little red cells in between the golden spherical cells. Hyaluronidase, which breaks down hyaluronic acid, which is a major component of the extracellular matrix, which allows the Staphylococcus aureus to proliferate within our body. They are able to produce staphylokinase, which is an enzyme that produces these fibrin threads that Staphylococcus uses. That Staphylococcus uses to kind of latch itself to our blood cells. They also produce lipases, which digest lipids, allowing for bacterial growth on the skin, and in cutaneous glands that secrete lipids in oils or hormones. And finally, beta-lactamase, which inactivates the beta-lactam antibiotic, giving Staphylococcus antibiotic resistance. Now, if we look at this image from the bottom right here, you can see the golden pus in the middle of this swelling. That kind of golden pus is a colony of the Staphylococcus aureus that have breached the skin barrier and caused an infection. It doesn't look very nice, but it's usually not really much of a problem. We just use regular antibiotics. I believe penicillin would work, but I'm not sure if we go into that specifically here. Either way, it can cause pimples or boils surrounded with inflammation. So Staphylococcus aureus can produce a few toxins that serve different and important functions. So the first one, cytolytic toxins, which disrupt the cytoplasmic membranes of cells, including leukocytes. So obviously that's going to have important roles in killing white blood cells that are trying to phagocytize and destroy the invading Staphylococcus aureus. So it's going to be one of the toxins helping Staph aureus evade the immune system. The second one, exfoliative toxin, dissolves the intracellular bridge proteins in between skin cells, which hold them together, and this causes a thing called skin sloughing, where you'll get clumps of skin which are usually held together through these bridge proteins. The bridge proteins are broken, there's nothing holding these like clumps of skin cells together, so the skin cells just break off. Kind of like how your dead skin cells are going to slough off if you scratch your head and you haven't had a wash in a while. So toxic shock syndrome toxin is an important one that you're going to want to remember. It causes a high fever, low blood pressure, and skin sloughing. It is rare, but extremely dangerous. So there's a poor little baby on the bottom right here who's unfortunately suffering from a pretty severe Staphylococcus or aureus infection. You can see that by the inflammation of his skin. It's kind of shiny as well. That's from the skin sloughing, where you get large amounts of the skin, your epidermis sloughing off, so it's kind of more sensitive, and you're not having kind of the older, thicker skin at the top of it. So the toxic shock syndrome, you'll probably know about it if you're a woman, I imagine, because that's one of the things they tell you about when you're younger, that you should keep in mind leaving in period products for too long, like tampons, because they're collecting blood. The bacteria like Staphylococcus aureus, which we mentioned before, has these coagulase enzymes that are allowing them to kind of form fibrin clots with the red blood cells, so they thrive in areas rich in blood cells. So a tampon is an ideal environment for them. You're going to have Staphylococcus aureus proliferation in there, and because the woman's lower region is a kind of a mucous membrane, the Staph aureus will be able to get through that and into the bloodstream and cause one of these infections. And if they start producing this toxic shock syndrome toxin, it's not going to be a fun time. But it's rare, so you won't see it too often. Staph aureus also produce enterotoxins, which cause vomiting, typically associated with staphylococcal food poisoning from ingesting food contaminated with Staph aureus. Infections can be non-invasive, for example, food poisoning, like we said, or invasive, as with cutaneous infection, which is infection through the skin, folliculitis, infection through a hair follicle, a furuncle or a boil, which is an extension of a hair follicle extension to the surrounding it's an extension of a hair follicle infection, so the folliculitis that we just mentioned, but the infection extends to the surrounding tissues, causing swelling and inflammation, and it's kind of a big pus-filled wart that doesn't look particularly nice. Or a carbuncle, which is a coalescence of a furuncle to a deep tissue infection. So a furuncle is the upper skin tissues, a carbuncle is a deeper tissue infection. Staph aureus infections can cause systematic diseases, toxic shock syndrome, bacteremia, which is a blood infection, which we show here. That's what can happen if you get a lot of Staphylococcus aureus proliferating in your blood. Like we mentioned before, they thrive in areas full of blood because they're producing these coagulase enzymes, forming these fibrin clots. And obviously blood infections are very dangerous, and they spread throughout your body, and if you get inflammation of blood vessels, you can get shut off of blood through to certain tissues, causing necrosis, which can lead to necrotic fasciitis, which we're going to go into when we go over streptococcus. In addition to that, Staph aureus can cause endocarditis, which is inflammation of the endocardium of the heart, because the infection in these tissues, when the Staph aureus are releasing antigens, cells of your immune system are going to pick it up and respond with an inflammatory response. And if that inflammatory response is happening in the endocardium of the heart, we're going to get endocarditis.